to begin by announcing the next one is on February 19th. And we do need presenters still. I would like to kind of get ahead of the game on the whole presenters thing. So if you think you might have a presentation available in the next few months, get in contact with me. We'll schedule it. I understand that having a deadline is the greatest way to get you to actually accomplish anything. It certainly is with me.
You can count on me, Geoff. I'll be ready.
Okay, yeah. Richard is next month. Hey, Bill, how's your layout?
Trying to get a hold of me, Geoff, and yeah, anytime out here. March is going to be a really complicated, heavy hitting month, so I would say not March at all.
Okay, well, I think Ross is about to set the standard for layout videos, and
we are in trouble.
With that, I am going to share my screen, and let's see if this works.
Welcome to the Pacific City and Northern Railway virtual tour. The PCNN Railway is approximately 11 feet square, U-shaped, point-to-point layout. Trackage is a mixture of Code 70 and Code 55 hand-laid track and turnouts, except for 2 commercial sections in the passing track and hidden trackage. Our tour over the narrow gauge starts in Pacific City, which features a small yard, a gallows turntable, the depot, and the city of Pacific City. The depot in Pacific City is scratch-built and is based off of plans of the South Pacific Coast Agnews Depot. After leaving Pacific City, the line skirts the edge of the bay on a 2% grade headed for tunnel number 1. After exiting tunnel number 1, the line encounters the bridge that carries it across Deception Cove. Just past the bridge is the last opportunity to take on water before the long, hard climb to Summit. After exiting tunnel number 2, the grade finally starts to ease as the train has almost made it into Summit. Just past Summit, we're taken to the outskirts of Equinox via a tall wooden trestle. Equinox is the end of the line for the PCNN. At Equinox, there is a Y, a depot, several industries, and the interchange with the Dayton, Sheridan, and Grand Ronde Railway. With track lane complete, it was time to start working on operations. Train number 3, the westbound morning freight from Equinox, exits tunnel number 1 and will soon be arriving at Pacific City. As he enters the yard limits in Pacific City, the engineer whistles for the grade crossing just ahead. Running just a little behind schedule, the morning freight pulls into yard track number 1, clearing the main line for the eastbound passenger train. The conductor will check with the station agent for any additional orders or waybills while the crew begins their switching assignments. Our crew is able to use the turntable to both run around the train and turn the engine in preparation for the return trip to Equinox. The turntable is an A-frame style that was common on many western roads. Constructed using heavy timbers that were locally sourced and combined with a minimum of specialized cast iron parts and rods, they were able to be quickly assembled in place. At the very center of the turntable was a set of small wheels riding on a circle of rail that formed a giant roller bearing or spider, that when the engine was properly balanced, allowed 2 to 3 men to turn the locomotive. While most other lines have begun adopting simpler and easier to maintain engine paint schemes, the PCNN takes pride in keeping their fleet's appearance as striking as the day they were delivered from the Baldwin Locomotive Works. After aligning the turntable to yard track number 2, the crew runs around the freight and couples up to the caboose. While the freight crew continues their work in the yard, the morning passenger train has already started loading passengers. Once the brakes are pumped back up to pressure, the crew then shoves the train far enough to clear the turntable lead, and then pulls the caboose and spots it on the turntable lead in preparation for their return trip. With train number 3 in the register, passenger train number 2 owns the main line for the next 2 hours for her first-class run to Equinox. As our train exits the yard limits, it takes a skillful engineer to balance the throttle and the Johnson bar to make sure that he continues to accelerate upgrade without slipping. The passengers get one last look at Pacific City across the bay as the train gets ready to enter tunnel number 1. The passengers are treated to a spectacular view of the Pacific Ocean as the train passes over Deception Cove. After exiting tunnel number 2, the train comes to the passing siding at Summit. Summit is a flag stop station, and with no passengers today, our train continues on to Equinox. Our train is right on schedule today and will soon pull into the Equinox Depot. The agent at Equinox registers train number 2's arrival 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Operation planning is just in the beginning stages. The ultimate goal is to keep 2 to 3 crews busy during an operating session. We wrap up our tour with some behind-the-scenes footage. Turnout positions are set by servo motors, controlled via a Tam Valley Depot servo control board mounted conveniently behind the control panel, which hinges down to allow access for maintenance and for setting of servo endpoints. In order to be able to maintain the 22-inch minimum radius on the Y, I had to design a removable tail track extension, which is easily installed for operating sessions and then can be removed and stowed away when the layout is not in use. Both the tail track extension and the lift-out portion needed to have simple yet reliable electrical connections. I used PC board spring-loaded test points mounted in holes drilled in 1/8 inch brass tubing that would then contact metal plates on the lift-out portions and thus provide electrical current to both sections. Here you see the spring-loaded action of the PC board test points. When the lift-out section is engaged, it drops down onto metal plates on the underside, which allow the electrical connection for the lift-out section. Here you see the lift-out section being installed. The beauty of this system is that nothing attaches to the lift-out section. Harp switch stands are connected to the turnout via 10/1000 phosphor bronze wire. A Wi-Fi capable Raspberry Pi running JMRI software interfaces to the PCNN's Lens DCC control system via a Lens USB adapter, allowing wireless control of the layout. Well, I hope you enjoyed the virtual layout tour. Hopefully you found one or two things you can incorporate into your own modeling. And just remember, you don't have to fill a basement full of trains to have fun. Take care and thanks for coming.
All righty. I am actually on call this weekend, and I just got a phone call who I'm currently letting hang for a second. So Ross, it's your layout. If you could take over until I can get back.
Sure. Hopefully it worked a little better than my connection did. It was pretty jittery. So I don't know how it all played out on the other connections.
That was one of the things we needed to learn.
But anyway, any questions? Be free to.
Ross, I like your railroad, except I don't want to fire on it. That wood looks too heavy. And I only say that because this morning we filled up the wood rack on our back porch because we have a wood stove.
Oh, yes. Yeah, but there's plenty of wood available. So, you know, they're going to use what's cheap and readily available for fuel.
Ross, I like
Right.
the
Very nice.
shoreline scree treatment you had going down to the water. Is that just like 3/4 minus gravel you use? It blends nicely with the track ballast.
Well, thank you. You know what? I was somewhere out about and saw a pile of that rock somewhere, and I always keep some coffee cans in the truck and thought, you know, that'll work someday. And it's just a pile of rock I found somewhere. I don't even remember where. And you just pour it on and let it, you know, by the Paul Scholes method, just let it, you know, find its natural slope and glue it all down. It worked really well.
Your layout reminds me a little bit of the Paul Scholes Pelican Bay layout.
It is heavily influenced by that. Way back when we got hit, I think it was 2008, 2009, the winter when we really got hit over Christmas, and we got a bunch of snow, and Paul's third video had just been released, and my wife had been buying me all the videos that he'd put together as DVDs. And the last one was that operations DVD. So, you know, you're snowed in, so I had nothing else to do but watch the new DVD that she had gotten me, and watched it, liked it, just got a wild decision that went out to his website and sent a message, you know, on the contact thing and said, Paul really liked it. You know, I never talked to the man in my life. And within like a half an hour, he responded to the email. I was floored that, you know, one of the famous people in the hobby would bother responding to my email. And he made the mistake then of saying, you know, if you're ever in the area. So it was like, what are you doing next weekend? So we went up next week. He had us come up, and we got a private tour of his layout. And it was fabulous. You know, as much as you've seen it in the magazines and the press, to see it in person. And it was just Paul, his dog. I don't remember the dog's name now. It's like Bailey or something. And we're just down there in the basement. He turned everything on and goes, "You want to run a train?" I about fell over. So got to run a passenger train around the whole layout and back. And that was just a fantastic day. Never forget that.
I got to see that layout when it was on an NMRA, I think the Seattle convention when it was up there.
Yep.
Tour. Yeah, he's really missed.
Yep, he was a great guy.
Ross, John
Yes, sir.
Harrison. Your rock formations were beautiful. I was wondering, are those just carved out of plaster, or how did you do
They're all molds. Most of them are Bragdon molds. I brought some of those at one of the national narrow gauge conventions, and they're just colored with diluted acrylic paint. Just
Mhm.
dilute the paint down in the spray bottles and just randomly spray the colors on, and try not to go too heavy. It's real easy to go too heavy.
Right.
Try to keep the colors light, because you can always make them a little bit darker, but it's really tough if you go too dark to start with.
That's right.
But those
are
molds by Bragdon are great.
are they cast in hydrocal or plaster Paris? Which one?
Most of them are plaster of Paris.
Yeah.
I tried some hydrocal, and I just didn't like the way it took the stains. I like the plaster of Paris better.
No, hydrocal is so dense, it's almost like iron.
Yeah.
You can't stain it. You can paint it, but you can't stain it.
Right. The original section of the layout, I did use hydrocal, with the dipped in the newspapers to do the basic landform.
Right.
And as the layout progresses, I got around, over on Deception Cove and the tunnels and stuff. I had switched over to just using the plaster embedded gauze for making casts, and that's so much neater. To just cut strips of that plaster impregnated gauze, dip it in water, and put it on, and it's much easier and quicker and less messy. And then that's
But
the
it-
basic landform.
But it isn't strong. That's
With 2 or 3 layers, it's strong enough.
Well,
It's not as
yeah,
strong as hydrocal, but
yeah.
I suppose you could go and maybe, I haven't tried it yet, but I assume you could, brush on a coat of hydrocal or ultracal over the top of it if you wanted some extra strength.
Sure. Okay.
But the layout's not portable, so when we move, it's done. It'll be dumpster fodder. So
Right. Thank you.
Ross, you know that Agnew Depot actually still has a model railroad inside it.
I didn't know that until you said it. I remember seeing something that it was still there and still being used, but I didn't realize it was a model railroad in there.
Yeah, the Cal Central got that depot from the SP in 1962 or 63 and still occupies it. Land is leased from the railroad, but the depot is fully, all but 4 feet at the end where the potties are, is occupied by railroad. And I say that because I was a member of that club for 30 years. So,
and I'd have to look it up, but it was like late 1870s, I think it was built, or early 1880s. So
1870s, yeah.
Yeah. So that's been there around a long time. And the South Pacific Coast is, one of the, I think, my favorite railroad of all time. Just
Yeah. Well, it's sort of inspiration to what you're doing with yours right now too. So.
And I got to give it up to all the guys who do videos and stuff, because that was 15 minutes of video, and I worked on that for a little over a year.
Yeah.
Learning a bunch of stuff, and so some of the stuff you did in the beginning, as you go along, you learn new things and new tricks and how to do things a little bit better. Then you go back and look at some of the first scenes that you shot, and you go, oh, those are terrible, and then you have to redo those. Then you learn a little bit more, you learn something else, and then, well, now the ones I did last aren't really that good either. And so then I kept I finally had to just stop and say, it's got to be good enough and be done with it. So I wish it would have played better, but I think Geoff can probably put out the link. It's on YouTube. And then you can actually go watch it where it'll run pretty smooth rather than be so spotty.
It looked just fine.
Did it?
You've
Did
got
it
a
play
real-
okay on your guys's?
It was jerky, but it looked
Okay.
good. You've got a nice
Okay.
looking little toy train there.
Thank you. It still dwarfs that N scale, right?
There's a reason we call it horribly oversized.
Well, and actually, to be honest, I've already begun acquiring, because I'm hoping in the next 7 years maximum to be able to retire. So I've already got a couple of projects I've already purchased and laid away for, because I think once retirement rolls around, again, back to Paul Scholes and running his layout, I think I'll be going to SN3.
That seems an awfully popular scale among narrow gaugers.
Oh, it's just the right, well, it's basically HO standard. They're about the same size, the engines and the cars, and they run so much better. although through a lot of work, I've gotten these engines to run almost Blackstone quality. There's a little, it's just nice having that little bit extra room and having the stuff be a little bit bigger, because have to keep going up on those on the Optivisor as the years go on.
See, you'd be fine in N scale.
Yeah.
So Ross, did you have some kind of a servo, or how did you get the bell action on the one loco?
That's thanks to Laurie McLean. He's a crazy Australian. If anyone hasn't heard of him yet, and if you go out to YouTube and search for him, he's got all kinds of stuff. He animates the figures and stuff, and he actually gave me the little geared motor up in Seattle at the 2012 National Narrow Gauge, and because he'd already done that in HO, so he said here, and it took me several years to finally get to the point where I could actually get it in the cab. But there's a little geared motor in the cab, and he actually was one of the first ones that I knew of that he uses one of the lighting functions of the decoder to actually drive the motor. And he's got this little circuit that he shared with you or with the general public, and that keeps the back EMF force when the motor shuts off, keeps it from blowing up the transistor in the decoder. But basically, it's a lighting function you turn on and off. And I actually have it programmed to where it ramps up in intensity and then stays there for a period and then ramps down. So if you get to watch it on YouTube and it's not, glitching, the bell works pretty smooth. And for the most part, it syncs up pretty well with the sound too. But that's all thanks to Laurie. He's just a crazy Australian and just another great guy to get to know.
I've posted a couple of links up to the chat session. So if you click on that, you'll find the first one is of this video, and the second one is Laurie McLean's YouTube page.
He just finished a blacksmith shop in O scale that has 2 or 3 figures. I think it has 3 figures now. And it's just pretty amazing the stuff he does.
All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, before I turn this over to Geoff, the other Geoff, would like to remark that it is nominations time for this year's Board of Directors election. Richard has decided that he is going to retire from the board and is also going to give up his position as secretary. So if you or anyone you know or would like to strong arm into being on the board of directors, nominations at 2dpnr.org or contact Greg, Robert, or Larry. And Geoff, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Can I introduce another input here with regard to nominations? I again got requested to participate in the PNR nomination program again this series. So also for the net or for the regional, the position of president and vice president are up for re-election. President, we believe Jeff Harrision is going to continue running again for the president position, and for the vice president position, Bob Parrish has been in there for quite a few years, and he is not running this year. I guess his time limit is up. There must be a limit to how many positions or how long you can hold a position. But so there is an opening for vice president of the PNR to be up for an election. So if anybody has any suggestions or any knowledge of people that are interested in holding a regional position, they can contact me. My email address is in the Division 2 log there for nominations. And the other 2 members of the nominating committee are Shirley Sample out of District 5 and Brian Stokes out of District 6, which is Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Northwest Territories. So we've got 3 out of the 7 covered. So I appreciate any ideas you have for nomination to let me know. Thanks. Back to you, Geoff. He disappeared.
Must be that call he's on. Yeah,
back
I
to
can
work.
I can assure you that the work as a secretary is not onerous. It's just time for me to move on to something else, like maybe working on my railroad. So please speak up, and I'm sure the board will be able to get you involved.
Hey, Doug, since Geoff isn't here, do you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, over 2 years ago, Dick Gemeinhart passed, and his widow Bev gave me passed on a coat, a jacket to find a new home for, and then COVID hit, and there are 2 requirements for this. One is it's 2XL, and the other is it's a life member jacket. So you've got to be a little bit older in order to have had a chance to be a life member. But it's great shape. It's just like new. And I'm a life member, but I'm a large, so 2XL it doesn't fit. So I'm trying to find a home for this jacket. If anybody knows somebody that's about the right size and hopefully is a life member of NMRA, I'd like to pass it on. That was Bev's wish for me to do. That's it.
Strangely enough, I'm a life member and I'm 2XL.
Well, there is a great idea.
All in favor of Geoff?
Moving on quickly.
I will, we'll work on getting it to you, Geoff. It's been in a bag with Isaac Harpold's name, because she delivered it to Whistle Stop, and then Isaac brought it to me, and it's been sitting in my spare bedroom for over 2 years now in a bag, and I just love to get it somewhere that it might actually be worn.
Okay, in theory, you've got my screen in front of you. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. What we're going to talk about today is making noises, making a joyous noise with a little tiny module that's dirt cheap. It's about $2.50 a piece. And it'll actually produce stereo quality sound if you do all the right things. I've gotten lots of requests of essentially how to actually use this thing. I published a bunch of how-to articles of sort of canned projects that use it. But we're going to focus a little bit more today on getting some pretty good sounds out from this thing. This is in the context of animation. Those of you who know me know that that's kind of my focus. And it's part of the whole animation sequence involving movement, light, sound, synchronization to tell a story. So this is all about sound. And the thing we're going to do today is focus on sound modules. And there are a whole bunch of different ones. I've probably tried 8. And you can get all different kinds of interesting things to come out. And I'm going to focus on one, and I'll try to be clear why I wound up focusing on this. This is kind of my go-to module now, and it actually does really, really well. When you consider generating sound, you want to think about a whole bunch of different things. What kind of sound you're going to produce, the quality that you want out of it, how are you going to deal with it? Do you have to adjust volume? Do you have to trigger it, start it, stop it? Does it have to play multiple tracks, multiple voices? How do you configure it. Do you need to put in random play and different things? So we're going to consider some of those things today, because I want you to get to kind of have a feeling for what the real issues are in using the module, and also ultimately show you how easy it is to use. Now, one of the things that people have a problem with is realizing that in generating sound, there are lots of pieces to it, including the original sound that you want to record, how it's coded, the player that you're putting it through, whether or not it's amplified, the speaker and the enclosure for the speaker, where you place it, and certainly last but not least, the listener and where they're positioned. The difficulty in explaining to people once they pick up something like these modules and play a sound, why they're not getting or not meeting their expectations, is that all of these things have to play together well in order to get good quality sound. And you can see the sound recording at the top, which is the original sound recording, and it's quite nice. And then the sound at the bottom, it was intentionally distorted, attenuated, frequency limited, noise was added, and it's just terrible. But you can see how, if you in fact don't take care of the sound as it's going through each of the stages, you'll come out with, you know, a sound that isn't very good. We're going to focus today on the DF player. The DF player actually can give you at least as good quality sound as you would get out of a CD player. And that's actually pretty good, considering the fact that you could drop $2.50 for one of these and get that kind of quality out of it. It's actually pretty amazing. The other two are two other modules that are somewhat similar. They're in some ways not as good for different reasons. Either they are temperamental in terms of the recordings, they're temperamental in terms of the playback. And I've, over time, have wound up using the DF player, coming back to it again and again. So I'm going to focus on that. DF player needs a speaker, and there's a wide range of speakers that you can give it. You can give it an amplified speaker in the vein of the signal that you left and right stereo that you give to your stereo amplifier. So you can have amplified speakers, you can have little cell phone speakers, and small ones, big ones, doesn't really matter. But we're going to see that there are two ways of getting sound out of it. What you start with is absolutely, positively critical. And there are lots of free sound sources that you can get on the web. Everything from, you can take the sound off of a YouTube video. There are lots of free sound sources that have different kinds of sounds, everything from explosions and creaks and animal sounds and background sounds. There's also a company called Fantasonics that has absolutely wonderful CD recordings of sounds of different scenes that are very, very well done. I recommend them. You can also do your own personal recordings, which I've done too. Any of those will work. All of those will give you different quality of sound, and you need to cope with that. The other thing you need to do is to realize that depending on the source you get your sound from, you may need to convert the sound to a form that the little module can play. This little module can play essentially two different kinds of recordings, MP3 recordings, and I think wave recordings, WAV recordings. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. You can record your own sounds, everything from your cell phone. I've done that. You can record them off of your PC through the web. You can do a recording from a camera, recording from an audio recorder, and video recorders, anywhere you want. So all of those give you the ability to grab the sound. Some of them are very, very high quality. You can get a very high quality digital recording from a lot of the video recorders now, because the video is actually the thing that takes all the bandwidth, not the audio. So you wind up with very, very high quality audio off of a video recorder in many, many cases these days. You also can get free software to manipulate it. There's a thing called WavePad, another one called Audacity, and the Nero Wave Editor. All of these are free that you can get off of the web. I very much wind up using WavePad. Audacity is a great editor as well. They're very similar in terms of what they can do. Professor K, who you may have seen on a number of different websites and forums, is actually a professional audio guy. And he likens editing audio to the way that you would build a kit. You need a certain set of skills developed with a certain set of tools. The primary tool for audio editing is the audio editor. And those three that I mentioned before will all give you a capability like we see here on the right-hand side of your screen, where you can look at the entire audio recording, which is the top two, right and left channel of a stereo recording. And then you can take and you can clip a portion of it and play with it and edit it out. So the most basic thing that you can do is take a long recording and take a snippet of it and then use that to create a particular sound snippet that you can play back, which we're going to see in a little bit. But you can also do things like you can measure the timing from peak to peak, which is going to be important later on. You can take pieces of it and replicate it and in effect glue it to the end or the middle, wherever you want. And you can also transform the sound the way you would as if you tinted the color of a car or a structure with paint. You can reform the image, you can change the speed, you can even change the frequency in parts. You can add rumble, you can add a reverberation to it. So you can actually color the sound, if you will, in many, many different ways. But the audio editor is usually pretty straightforward, but it takes some practice to go and do. And I had a project once to create a car that replicated John Allen's boxcar that indicated if it was being roughly handled by an operator. I created a sound set to go with that. And you can put a huge amount of time into manipulating the sound and getting it to be exactly the way you want. So here are the kinds of things that you could do to build the components of the sound. You can trim, as I said before, change the speed, reposition it, and you can do all kinds of mixing that you want as well. The most important tool, though, is your own ears. If you think it sounds good in the end, that's great. It's equivalent to if you scratch build a car, you paint a car, you weather a car. If you think it's, you got it to the point where it's good enough for you or it's great for you, that's true too for audio. The best thing to do is to actually start out and try it yourself. What we're going to do now is talk about using the module, assuming that we've got a piece of audio that we want to replicate. We need to go and load it onto the module, but we need to tell the module to start to play the audio. So we need some kind of trigger. And a trigger can just be a switch contact. And a lot of people get hung up with, what do I need to go and actually make this work? So what I want to do today with the real modules is I want to show you that just by using a contact closure or a switch, which could also be a sensor, it could be a timer, it could be a lot of different things, we can make that sound play. And we can actually manipulate the sound just slightly as well in terms of completing the sound or ending it in different ways. So the triggers that typically you'll see are a switch or a push button, a contact on a track like this one here, a contact on a relay, but you can also have magnetic switches. You could have proximity sensors of many, many different kinds. You can also actually use the a decoder's output that actually can be pulling the contact to ground and actually turning the sound on. And I've actually demonstrated that in a couple of different articles already. The basic component we're going to use is this little module called DF player. And you see the two forms here. The basic connections to it are that it needs power. And in this case, you would like to power it with 5 volts. It can actually take between about 3 to 5.5 volts. And the reason you want to use the 5 volts is the 5 volts is directly powering, or can directly power, a 3-watt audio amp that's built into the board. That 3-watt audio amp is a mono amp, single channel amp, that you can use to drive an 8-ohm speaker directly. And that little lamp can actually put out 3 watts. Now, if you work through the current draw, if you're going to drive the sound really hard into an 8-ohm speaker at 3 watts, it consumes a bit of power. So you got to pay attention to that, because that's going to draw down on wherever that 5 volts is coming from. Besides driving a speaker directly, you can also take 2 different signals out that are literally the left and right signal of a stereo channel that you can record on and put on the card that feeds into here. This is a holder for a micro SD card. So you can see how large this picture is in comparison to the module. I'll get to the actual module in a second. You can take the right and left channel directly off the module together with the ground line, and you can feed it into a stereo plug and literally plug it into a stereo system or an amplifier of various sorts. So that amplifier, in fact, can do some interesting things. And you can get really top-notch stereo quality sound out of the little module. Now, to make the module work, the thing I'm going to demonstrate first is a very simple mechanism where all you do is wire the 5 volts and ground up, wire your speaker up, and notice the speaker, by the way, does not connect to the ground, just goes to these 2 speaker connections here. And you put on your card whatever you want to play, and directly with only 2 switches, this is built into the card. And we're going to get to making it more elaborate in a second or two. But with those 2 switches and nothing else, and you can put tracks on your micro SD card, and they're MP3 files, just like you would have on your computer. You load them onto the SD card. We'll talk about how you do that in a second. And if you press the key 1 line, it plays the first file that's in the root directory or the root folder, the basic folder. If you hit the other key line, key 2, strangely enough, it plays the 5th file in the root. And I'm actually going to go and leave my screen for a second because I want to show you. Let's see, can I get this? Am I sharing my, oh, I think I can do it this way. Oh, I got to close the other app.
The other app is Zoom, isn't it?
It probably is. Okay. Let's see. I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay, you can see me now, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the actual module, which is this little guy right here. Now, when I build things and I experiment with it, what I like to do is to make things really convenient for me to use. So the actual module itself looks like this. I'm going to move this up a little so I can see it. So it looks like this. That's all it is. And you can see the micro SD card. I hope you can see it. That plugs into it. I just dropped it. And it slides into the top and you push it in and it stays in. And that's it. And that's the entire module. So that is enough to give you the pretty high quality sound out of it with whatever you put on the little tiny SD card. This is a module that I put together just to make it easier for me. And it has 3 connections that go to it. And the 3 connections are power, ground, and the software serial input to it, which I'm not going to demonstrate today. But what I want to show you, powering it up with this little Arduino board that I've got here. And now I'm hoping that you'll see this, and I'm hoping you're going to hear it too.
1, 5, 1, 5.
Now, those are the two files, and I have 5 files that are loaded onto the SD card. This is a different SD card. And they simply have me saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which I originally used for debugging.
6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Now that is just me sequencing through one after the other. But if you, all you want to do is just play one.
1, 1, 1.
That's repeating it.
1, 5, 1, 5.
I can, all I have to do is do a short trigger. If I hold it long,
6, 5, 5, 5, 5.
it'll put it into complete repeat mode until I trigger it once again short. So just by a contact closure with this module, I can have it play almost anything I want. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change cards. So I want to demonstrate a trick that you can do to make this a little bit more flexible than first appears. Power it back up. Always power it down when you change the cards, otherwise you're likely to wipe out your card. Okay, now here, hopefully, there's a bell. Now, I have to tell you that this bell is a recording that was made and then replicated again and again and again. And it'll go for about, I think, 15 minutes. It doesn't take very much in terms of storage on the little card. But the thing is, it'll just keep ringing. So if you have a recording that's very long, one of the issues is, well, how do I stop it? Because with a touch of a contact like this, there's no easy way to stop it, except if on the second file that I have, if I just put silence, then it plays the little snippet of silence, and it turns the other one off. So I can actually trigger a very long sequence and then turn it off simply by going and triggering another file that simply plays silence. So it's a really nice little module. You can see that this is an iPhone speaker. I like these because they're tiny, they're incredibly flat, they're well contained. They only have 2 inputs to it. And they actually started looking like this. They started looking like that. Hopefully I can still show it to you. And if you cut out all the plastic and seal it off, you wind up with a nice short little module. But you can also drive high bass speakers that look like this, right? Or a little bit smaller one like this. These are commercial ones. And you can even find speakers that are tiny. Anybody want to guess where this one came from? This one actually came from a laptop. So you can find little speakers all over the place. And if you wanted to take the sound from those 2 stereo outputs, you can actually connect them to a little board like this. And this is actually a 5-watt amplifier. So you can take it and you can drive bigger speakers by connecting to small amplifiers that actually can be driven directly from the batteries and the things that drive the modules themselves. So this little module is really what it's all about. And if I get back to sharing my screen again. Yeah, we can move on. So the 2 contacts I was exercising were these 2 over here. And it turns out there'll be a reference at the end to have a manual to describe all the things you could do with this. If instead of a direct contact to ground, I inserted a resistor here, I could actually get, I think, 12 or 15 different actions to occur based on the value of the resistor that you insert here. But with just direct connections to ground made by a contact or whatever, I can generate sound and control it. I can also control it by connecting it to some programmatic source like an Arduino, and I can actually send serial commands to it to make it do all kinds of stuff. And the interesting thing is with these tracks, I can literally put on thousands of sounds onto the the micro SD card. It'll take a micro SD card up to 32 gigabytes. So the odds are you're just never going to fill it up. These are the kinds of commands you could send to it to make it do all kinds of stuff, to play different tracks, different sounds. You can raise and lower the volume. You can actually have an equalizer to 6 different settings. You can feed it directly from a USB card. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do with it. I rarely ever use all of these, but it's nice to know that there's a library that all you've got to do is type in one of these things and you're good to go. So you're basically not dealing with the nits and grits of the card. There are 3 different ways in which the files can be stored and played. What I demonstrated to you was 5 files stored on the root, and you typically name them 001, 002, 003, etc. But you can put up to 8 digits in the name, but they recommend that you start with a number like this. Oh, I'm sorry, backwards. Now, the darn thing about it all is that the name actually is not significant. What's significant with the name is to help you remember what you put on the card. It's actually in the file order, in the file structure, which depends on the order in which you wrote the file onto the card. The little program that they have on the little sound modules is dumb as can be. And all it does, if you tell it to play file 1, it goes to the first file entry. You play file 5, it goes to the 5th file entry. Even if the number in file 5 is 999, it will still play the 5th file entry. You can also put them into a subdirectory, a subfolder called MP3. The reason you do that is if you access them programmatically. And again, it's the order written in that folder MP3 that if you tell it play file 3, it's actually the 3rd file in the folder. What changes is when you use their folder numbering system. You can have 199 folders rather, and they're all numbered 01 to 99. And then you can have a number for the file from 001 to 255. And then with the program entry, you can actually refer to a folder by number and a file by number, and the order doesn't matter. It will actually play the actual folder number and file. It's kind of a bizarre thing. When I first started using these, I couldn't figure out why it wasn't working right until I got enough understanding of how a thing actually works to see this is the real order. So here's an example of one of those modules together with a similar kind of speaker. And this is a very tiny motor. Actually, it's very close and very similar to the motor that Ross was talking about to move his bell. And this is going to go round and round over here. And there's a little bump over here that closes a micro switch. That micro switch is connected back to the little sound module, and it's going to play the sound just like when I struck the wire on my little module here. So here's what happens when you hook it all up. And there's also this is rotation also moves this little hand up here up and down, and you'll see what that does to the figure. So the anvil, quote unquote, is being struck and you get the sound produced. But what's is producing the sound is as this drum goes around, it actuates this little micro switch, and it tells the sound module to go and play the one sound. And that's how it's produced, literally. So there's no computers involved, there's no nothing involved. It's just actuating a switch to get the anvil sound. If you want more interesting things to occur, then you need to go to a way to program it. Why bother? Because you can do all kinds of stuff. You can combine it with DCC programming. You can make a random behavior occur, and many, many different things. I typically use Arduinos because they're cheap, they're plentiful, and they do the job, and they have the most libraries written for them, including, there's 4 different libraries to drive this module, and some are better than others, and I already referred to one of them. You can also do things like take the modules and create a thunderstorm. And let's see if I can get a thunderstorm to occur for us in this wonderful way. You can, and here's a module in a box together with a little Arduino Pro Mini. And you also wind up with 2 strobes, and these strobes are battery-driven strobes. You can use commercial strobes as well. All you need is a switch closure in order to activate the strobe, whether it's commercial or otherwise. I typically demonstrate it with this small speaker, which is a great little speaker, but the problem is it requires manual intervention to set it up. Together with the module and 2 relays driven by the Pro Mini in order to go and get the strobes to work. The neat thing about this is the entire sequence is done over, of course, typically when I do it in a clinic, of something on the order of 10 minutes. So the sequence, which has been published already in the MRH Modeler's Introduction to Arduinos, is actually incredibly true to life. It starts with thunder in the distance, strobes the lightning as it gets closer. I hear the thunder in the distance. And as it gets closer and closer, it gets louder and shorter. And the time between the lightning flashes and the thunder gets shorter and shorter, which is exactly what you want. But all of that is done simply by setting up a little program, which you can go and download. You don't have to actually program it yourself. You just have to put everything together. And you can get an incredibly realistic thunderstorm moving through your layout. So while we're experiencing the thunder in the distance, you can also use DCC sound decoders like Digitrax decoders, ones that you can program and reprogram the sounds in together with these sound modules. And you can put the 2 together with an Arduino control and get something that looks like this.
All right, try her again. Whoa, stay down, He's running hot, Maybe next time, needs more work.
So you can get a sequence that goes through, and the real issue in doing something like that is coordinating the timing of the sound with the motion and the lighting that you want, just like the thunderstorm is doing now. You do that by looking at the sound in your sound editor and noticing while the thunderstorm is going, noticing when the right things occur, the right sounds occur, you can get the timing down, and then you can put the equivalent delays into your Arduino to affect the overall timing of what you're trying to do in your animation or in your sound effects. So by combining the elements of the sound, the timing, together with the lighting, you can actually develop some really interesting things. And Here are some links that include where you can get the modules. Right now, I've priced it on eBay. You can actually get 5 of them at $2.60 a piece. That's about the cheapest I've seen them for a long, long time. All right. I had enough thunderstorms. And there's other animations you can look to as well. Modeler's Introduction to the Arduino will give you more ideas for sound and coordination, and lots of other ideas on how to put things together. So that's it for Scale Sound, and I hope you enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, I'll take them.
Well, Jeff, I'm going to start. There was one oddity I noticed on your original schematic. You had that you could, on the right side of the ground, it said ground or -5 volts.
Yeah, well, if you had an independent 5-volt supply, you usually you have the +5 is going to something called VCC, and the -5 is going to ground. It's just the other side of the 5-volt supply. It's not a -5 volts.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. It's really easy to use the modules to generate sound. It's really easy to put them together. It just takes a little time and a little imagination. Try it. Sometime it's a very easy and relatively cheap thing to go and use and insert sound into your modeling. And you can put it in a lot of different places. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, Jeff, that I guess sounds like that's it.
Let me take myself off mute then. So at this point, I think we can consider our open mic time. Does anybody have anything they want to show the rest of us?
I do.
John, yes.
By the way, I'm not Nora. We're using Nora's computer, so that's why under my face it says Nora. I'm John. I don't know how many of you that are watching today watched our last presentation about a month ago, but I gave a short talk at the end about my progress on my Cajon Pass layout in an area called Alray, which is just down the hill from my main railroad, which is up at Summit. And I was basically talking about how I was modeling scenery using sawdust. And I got about 90% through and everything crashed. And Geoff Bunza was nice enough to answer questions, and he answered them correctly when I talked to him. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes, and just so I know, is there a time limit? I don't plan to talk more than 5 or 10 minutes at the most, but I don't want to run over time. Jeff, what is there?
All yours.
No? Okay. All right. So I want to share screen. Okay, this is the area of Alray. This is the farthest uphill. With the tracks that you're looking at are 2.2% uphill grade coming out of Los Angeles, San Bernardino, and heading up towards Summit. Summit's another couple miles or so up the hill. This is the farthest west of, I'm sorry, farthest east, farthest uphill position of on my railroad. So just to kind of get you oriented, the track on the left is a long passing siding, and they join just before you go to the first tunnel. They're two short tunnels. Okay, where? This is just a little bit downhill from there. And that is Route 66 going under the tracks. And I don't know, can everybody see this? Does this show up as a pointer?
Yes, it does.
Okay, wasn't sure. So Route 66 goes down and then crosses under the uphill track, which is a steeper, I'm sorry, the downhill track, which is 3% grade. And this area on the other side of this mountain is called Gish. That is unscenic yet. I haven't started that yet. So, and this area right down here is where I was continuing on with the scenery. And I did it a little differently, and it was an experiment, and it actually turned out to work pretty well. So this is where we were just looking. The tunnel is just right back there. Here's the bridge, it comes down, and the uphill tracks. So there is this rather tall mountain just which was all built on with sawdust over the actual contour curves lifted from a geodetic map. But the hill got very low and there really weren't any contours in here because it was under 40 feet high, I guess, and there's a contour every 40 feet. So I wanted to do this in sawdust because I wasn't quite sure what it would look like, and to just take a big piece of extruded foam and start hacking away at it without knowing what I would end up with. I didn't want to do that. So what I decided to do is just fill in all this area with some scrap wood, and I just pile up sawdust in here. It's just like you were when I started model railroading about 75 years ago, playing in the sandbox. So let's see. This is where the old scenery was continued. And from a little bit of the geodetic map and from some photos, pretty faint photos, but I could get the outline of these hills anyway. This is what it looked like as near as I could tell. There's a creek that runs along here, and that was put in a little bit later. And here's Route 66 again. Don't have the striping in yet. So what I think I got this far and pretty much crashed at that point. So I simply pile up sawdust and I somehow end up with hundreds of gallons of sawdust left over from my woodworking, most of it building the railroad. I can't believe there's that much, but I have like 3 or 4 full garbage cans full of sawdust. So I just started piling it up and massaging it around until it looked the way I wanted it to look. And let's see, it's another view here, just kept going down. And normally what I would do would be to just put hard shell over this and then somehow get the sawdust out, because I don't like to leave it in for it might get moldy or dusty or whatever from the bottom down. But that's a lot of work and kind of messy. So I decided I'm just going to cast over this, make the mold, make the whole hill, which is about 5 feet long and about less than a foot wide, lift it off and then just throw away the sawdust. And that's what I did. Okay, where's the next one? Okay. That's another little piece of it showing it up close. This is the creek here. It stopped. It's a runoff for the mountains. And a little bit more of the view. As I first dumped the sawdust in, I then wet it and actually end up putting gallons of water on it. And you can really mold it into almost like plaster. You can actually make a vertical slope, or very nearly, well, vertical slope by just compressing it in. And you can see it got darker here. And you want it fairly firm before you put the hard shell over, otherwise you'll disturb the shape. So at about this point, the whole 5-foot-long scene is in sawdust, and I like the looks. I compare it to photographs, and I have a way of never, if I'm working at the end of the day, I don't do anything. I get up the next morning and look at it, and I'll always find some little thing to tweak. Let's see, where do we go from here, Noah?
That's it.
Okay, well.
Stop sharing.
What?
So just describe what you did.
Okay, somehow the other scenes didn't get in, and I'm not quite sure why. But the next thing is to simply cover this over with some sort of hard shell, paper towels, whatever. I tend to like to just drape cheesecloth over it. It grips right in when you wet it, and then simply brush on hydrocal. And what I wanted to show you, and unfortunately I won't be able to, is that after that's done, I can simply lift off the whole hard shell and actually set it on the floor, dug out this, got rid of this sawdust and dropped the hard shell back in, and had the whole scene. Yeah, it's so this is the finished hard shell. I apologize that I couldn't give you the next steps. I'm not quite sure why they didn't show him up. I have photographs of those. So at any rate, I have tried, as I've said before, I have tried all of the other techniques that are used and by everyone, and I always end up coming back to this. The main reason I think for me is a little bit unusual. All of my models are attempting to reproduce a scene exactly as I see it in photographs, as well as it can be done given some selective compression. And therefore, before I start putting in the plaster, I want to know that every curve, as near as I can tell, is exactly right. And the only way I have figured out how to do that is with this technique. So I guess that's all I have. If there's any questions. One of the questions from last time, and again, I don't know how many people were here, that Geoff answered was, how do you wet the sawdust so it can be workable? Because I don't know if you've ever picked up a pile of loose sawdust, but it's pretty unmanageable. And by wetting it about every inch or so that you add, it tends to bond together really well. Particularly if you let it sit overnight, it gets quite workable. And also is not as messy because there's no dust once it's wet.
Where do you get that much sawdust?
Well, like I said, I have actually thrown a lot away, and we live sort of in the forest, and I just go out and back and throw it out. But then I started saving more and more of it. I can't explain why I get so much. I have a few large saws, table saws, and chop saws, and I have a lot of framework in my bench work, and it just adds up. It's amazing. But if you wanted to get sawdust, all you got to do is knock on the door of any woodworking place like a cabinet shop, and they should be glad to get rid of it, because if I get barrels of it, they're getting truckloads of it, and it's hard to, it's, you know, difficult to get rid of sometimes. So you're probably doing them a favor, just keep taking it away.
Doesn't it compress when it gets wet?
A little bit. That's what you want. You want it to get firmer, and so that when you put the hard shell down and you press down a little bit on the paper towels or whatever with a brush or even your hand, you don't distort the surface, because you, after you've looked at it and said, this is what my final scene, this is what I want it to look like, at least the surface, you don't want to mess it up by the time you get the plaster on. So yes, I end up pressing pretty hard on it, and it compresses a little bit, and you put another ½ inch on, compress that, and it compresses down, and it sounds arduous, but it really goes quite quickly.
It would be tempting to actually spray it with diluted matte medium and see if it just solidifies, which is also what you want, right?
It doesn't have to, well, you mean, and you leave it there, that's your, you not use a hard shell?
Exactly.
Well, I don't like the idea of having tons of sawdust, you know, part of the railroad. Also, and something I could show you if we turned around and looked at the scene from Gish back in here, this whole area under here is hollow, and my tracks actually go partially under this.
Yeah,
so
of course.
All open.
Yeah.
And it's still incredibly strong. You wouldn't want to walk on it, but it's amazing if you've done any work with hydrocal, a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch thick of hydrocal is really strong. And also, if you don't like what you're doing, I have probably bashed out 30% of what I put in on my whole layout, because I come back the next day and it doesn't quite look right. I just go in with a hammer, knock it out, and literally within 15 minutes, I've thrown a little more sawdust in there, put some paper or towels or whatever down, and changed it, which I defy anyone working with extruded foam or chicken wire to be able to do that. You end up with a saw, and it's a big mess. So that's a huge advantage that I see.
When I was younger, we used wadded up paper under hydrocal. Did you try that, or is it?
In about 1970, my first Cajon Pass layout, and I had just read Lynn Westcott's book on that. Yes, I did that. The problem with that is wadded up paper, you can't get nearly the detail that you can with the, I mean, I can put in grooves, almost fine detail with the sawdust if you want to, although I usually save doing that in plaster or possibly some other material for the final details.
It's kind of what I figured.
So anything else? Otherwise, I'm done.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well,
I wish I'd been here last time. Could have seen that.
It is on video. It's on YouTube.
That's right. Yeah.
You okay, John?
Yeah, I just got a cramp. I just stretched up. I got a cramp in the back of my leg. Sorry, I'm okay.
All right.
This speed over 25 is for the birds, isn't it?
Yeah.
So since we're talking about open mic, I just want to let folks know there's a new makerspace at the Tualatin Public Library. If you've ever wanted to try out laser cutting, they've got a glow forge. If you ever wanted to try out a vinyl cutter like the Crickets, they have a Silhouette, which from what I hear is better for model railroading. It's got a better abilities. I don't know. I haven't tried either of them yet. They've got a 3D printer. I believe it's a filament printer. They've got a 3D pen. So if you want to try doing it freehand, you can do that. It's free if you're in the Washington County library. If you got a Washington County library card, you can go in and play. I haven't done it yet. I'm still trying to figure out how to do the necessary files to drive the Glowforge, the laser cutter, but I'm looking forward to trying it out and seeing if it's worth it to me.
Is there a sign up for it? Is the line a mile long?
I haven't been there. My understanding is weekends are busier than weekdays. They have just put in a 10-person limit in the room. So yeah, weekends are probably gonna be bad, but weekdays, they said you should be able to get in anytime. Now they are limited time periods. It's a 2-hour time frame every day at different times of the day. So check out the specifics on their site. You have to be certified to use certain ones of them. It took me all of 30 minutes to watch the videos and take the test twice to get the answers right. So I'm certified to use the Glowforge now. I just don't know how to use it yet.
Well, that sounds like it's going to be plenty useful, especially since about, I don't know, half of our division membership is within 30 miles of that. And a good chunk of it is in Washington County proper.
Yep. So just stay out of my way when I want to use it. Don't hog the room, please. I'm especially looking forward to the Silhouette machine because I want to see how well I can do window frames instead of door frames.
Yeah, it'll do styrene, but only up to a certain thickness. It's pretty thin stuff.
The advantage of N scale.
Yeah. All right. So,
since we don't seem to have a wealth of questions, I have a question I'd like to pose to the entire group. I'm working on something that's very odd. As you probably are familiar with, you can do block detection by doing detection of current flow in an electrical block in a layout. You can also do point detection with an optical detector or a number of different detectors, including some that I've developed, to judge when a car or something is at a particular point or location on your layout, like at the end of a track or something like that. So you have absolute point detectors and you have block detectors. My question in general, that I'm curious what I'm going to get back, suppose that you had a new kind of detector that detected when a train was in an area. Inasmuch a block detector is a larger area than a point detector, suppose that you could define an even larger section that might include multiple tracks for you to detect whether or not a car or a loco or even an entire train was in a particular area. Like, I'll give you an example, in front of a station, or in a yard, or in a tunnel, or in a town. Would that be of any interest to you as a modeler? And those of you who are operators, I'd like to ask the question in that light as well. especially since I'm not much of an operator, even though I've played one on TV.
I guess my question would be, what advantage would it give me over multiple block detectors?
I'm actually asking you, could you use it? I'm not stating an advantage for it one way or the other. I'm asking a question, if it existed and you could control the area somewhat, would it be of any value?
The basic question, I think you need to flip this one around, Jeff, is to ask, what's the end use? Block detection, we know, because that's immediately goes into signaling systems. That's the way real signal systems work, is by block detection, at least historically they have. And similarly, your point detection, of course, you're well aware that you use that for grade crossings and things like that, and end of track, etc. An area detection, I'm not real clear what the end product of that, knowing that piece of information is.
Let me try to give you a couple of examples, at least that have been posed back to me when I've asked this question already. One is that there are some people who want to actually play sounds following a train around a layout. And actually, area detection is more interesting in doing that than block detection.
True.
So that's one example. The second thing is, there are times when you don't really care that the train is in a particular track, but you are actually interested in that it's at a particular station. So it might be on track 1 or track 2, but it's at the station. And there are some people who think that that's of value. In particular, if what you've got is a display, like a panel, or you've got a display of trains around the layout for a display for visiting public or onlookers or tourists or whatever. They don't really know or understand what a block is, but they know that there's a station called Portland. And if the train's at Portland, that's of interest to them. Even if you have 3 trains at Portland, it's still of interest that there are 3 trains at Portland. And I actually got down this weird path, being on Amtrak cross country, armed with an FRA radio, listening to the traffic on the radio with the railroad personnel, and watching the world go by, and at times not knowing where I was, in particular before the days of GPS. So I would know when we were at a station. When we left the station, I knew that we were 10 minutes out of the station, but I didn't know exactly where we were unless somebody either announced something on the radio, or I passed a mile marker or some other descriptor. And it was interesting to me to follow my way along with the train, but I didn't exactly know what block I was in. I really didn't care either. So the question is really, if I have a situation where I generally know where I am, even though I don't know what block I'm in, is that of any interest to anybody else? And so it's kind of I understand it's an odd question.
Jeff, this is Alan Cotlin. I don't have a picture of my face because I don't have a camera facing into the room. But yes, I'm a little interested in that idea. The other side of what I've been looking for is, if a train is within an area, can I tell which direction it is going?
In this particular case, it could be a big maybe.
Okay, then I'm maybe I'm very interested.
Okay. And do you have a particular reasoning behind what you're looking for?
Yes, I'm running a very complex layout, very slow build. I've been at it for a few years now, and I'm now getting into the electrical side of management to make my train run. So I'm playing with Arduinos and switches and just trying to learn the whole process. Probably something you learned 25 years ago. But I'm trying now to manage my point-to-point. But let me look at this. My layout is a large point-to-point, 3 levels. And at each end of the point-to-points, I have a reverse bulb that returns it back to the opposite end of the room.
Got it.
What I'm interested in is during the single line main line, if I have a train there, that's good information for the yard operators to know that there's a train either coming or going on the main line that the yard operator wants to run his train out on. So is it there and which direction is it going? Is it coming or going away from me? Because it's on the other side of the hill. The train, the yard master can't see it.
Right.
So interested for me is there a train in the area? That's great. And then if I could know which direction it was going would be for myself all the more helpful.
Okay, got it. I understand that.
Love to have you, love to get together with you later. And I believe I've still got one of your old business cards. I'll give you a jingle.
Okay. My email address, if you look up the presentation, I think is on the last page of the presentation too.
Oh, all right. I'll do that too.
Geoff,
Thanks.
this is Greg. Yeah, just a thought on that, just from the previous comment from Alan. Especially if you had an area where you had hidden staging and kind of a time where a train should be getting through there. It should take, 3 minutes to get through there, and it doesn't. So having a situation where instead of the sound of your train falling on the floor is the indication something's gone horribly wrong in your staging area, an alert or some visual auditory thing to let you know that, yes, there's a train in this area, and for whatever reason, it is not moving. There might be some potential there. The other thing that I thought of was, I remember an old MR article talking about kind of setting a stage, a train, everything would be dark. And then when the train approached or got closer, the lights would start coming on, the town would kind of come to life, and then the train would arrive like at your situation there where the station is. And then different things would be triggered. And then as the train leaves, everything kind of quiets back down. I think having zones like that around a layout might be beneficial. So you don't just constantly have, if there's not a train switching over the industrial area, all the noises shouldn't be playing. The lights, the light should be down. If you've got activity, then things should be happening. And I think there could be some, especially for like a larger layout where you've got lots of different things going on, you can get really drowned out with all of the noises and sounds, and you've got sawmills and fire trucks and all sorts of stuff. Just having it just where you're at and then being able to monitor that, I think would be a good situation. So I think there's some potential. I just, like you said, it's an odd question, and the exact final product is, going to be interesting.
Okay, thanks.
So
Appreciate it.
there, Greg, there it comes down to, is it more cost effective to have micro blocks or an area detector? Depends on how expensive, Geoff, is your detector going to be?
Well, it doesn't exist yet. And the far out thinking is, think about a detector that has a lens on it, and you can focus the lens to a point, to a block, or to an area. Depends on what you want to do with it. I'll leave it like that because none of it's proven yet. So, but I'm going down this really odd path right now. And anyway, I appreciate the feedback. Every once in a while, I got to do a reality test. Am I going down a rat hole or a rabbit hole, as Ross always says? And a lot of times I go down rat holes and they just get deeper and deeper, and I'm not sure that there's a way out of them. This is a relatively interesting problem, going off in a tangent that I've never gone through before. So I'm really curious to see where it winds up. Anyway, your feedback is important.
Geoff, John
Yep.
Harrison here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would think that the sound aspect would be an important area. Do you know, I haven't messed with the Rolling Thunder that Broadway Limited has put out. Does anyone have experience with that? Do you even know what it is?
I know what it is. I read the patent on it. I know how it technically operates.
Okay, well, apparently you can get very good locomotive sound with large speaker, a fairly large speaker, certainly a lot larger than in the tender of an HO locomotive, mounted under the layout. And as I understand it, you could have, maybe you'd have a couple of them, one at one end of your layout and one at the other, and so that the sound is coming from where the train is, or at least roughly. But if you had multiple ones, maybe, I don't know, depends on how big your layout is, 2, 3, 4 areas that could be detected with your system, it would tell which speaker to turn on, and could be quite dramatic, particularly for a club or a demonstration layout.
Yeah, it'd have to be some extension of Rolling Thunder. I don't think it has the ability to switch speakers among.
Oh, really?
I don't think it does.
Okay.
Jeff?
Yo.
One thing that an area detector would be nice for, I think, is grade crossings. Instead of having to put in, like, especially for multiple tracks, instead of having to put in like 2 to 4 detectors per track, if you can just define this area and say, if there is a train in here, trigger. When it's gone, stop. That would be nice.
Yep, got it.
I can see a similar thing with a train in the station, especially, you know, if it's got multiple tracks there. The same situation goes. You only play the sound of people boarding and unboarding. If you've got the ability to tell what kind of cars are in the station, so gee, is that a passenger car that stops someplace on one of those sidings, or is that just a boxcar? So I'm thinking of visual recognition of software here, but
well, there's a variation. There's a variation of that. I'll put back to you. Suppose that you had the ability to know the beginning of the train and the end of the train, and they reacted differently. Would that be of value?
Well, I certainly don't need to hear the sound of the stoker as the caboose goes by.
Well, let me rephrase the question. Suppose that you knew when the engine passed the station, and then later when the caboose passed the station, or when the engine passed the station and the observation car later passed the station.
I can see it being useful. I wouldn't personally want it. I'm not as interested in the animation side of it yet, but I can see that would be very useful to, and that gets back to what Alan was saying about directionality.
Yeah, it would trigger different announcements.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And is it the front of the train that's passing through the station, or the back of the train that's passing through the station going backwards?
Yeah, anything, I think something like this that could be added to an existing layout as another layer would be very beneficial. Because like you were talking about, Richard, you know, adding micro blocks, it's kind of hard to do if you've already wired everything and done a bunch of your scenery and decide, hey, I'm going to go back and try to add a bunch of micro blocks. If this was something where, hey, I can hide this in a shanty and hide this in a oil building and hide this in the backside of a gas station, and I have these laser eyes or whatever were, you know, optical sensors of some sort, it's a little easier to define that than going back in and cutting a bunch of micro blocks and adding a bunch of Arduinos to the underside of a layout.
Right.
Well, thanks, guys.
Okay. We have a new visitor. I see he popped up somewhere near the end of the presentations. And so I'd like to introduce, if you'd like to come off mute, the president of the NMRA, Gordy Robinson.
Gentlemen, sorry I am coming at the end of your meeting. It's been a whole day of meetings, and for some reason I'd written 11 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock when I'd converted this time zone. So I don't know why. Maybe I thought it was in Hawaii or something. But never mind. Maybe it was just hopeful for better weather. But it's nice to see you all. I'm trying to do a bit of a round robin around quite a few different divisions just to say hello, wish everyone a happy new year, and see where the rubber hits the road. There's a big list. I'm not targeting you because of Geoff or anything like that. Although Geoff did say when he saw me on Wednesday, he said, "Oh, you should come to our meeting." And then somebody else who I now will never trust to be able to count again said it's 11 o'clock in the GMT. I was like, okay, so I apologize for that. Geoff did send me the correct time. That's never mind. So I just wanted to come and say hello, give you guys the opportunity if they've got to ask me any questions or ask me about anything. That's what I'm here to do. Any questions about any recent changes or soon to be changes, I'm happy to take them and answer them as candidly as I can for a meeting that's being recorded. But yeah, that was the main objective. So I don't know if there are any questions, or Geoff, if there's any particular thing you wanted me to speak about.
I don't have anything particular, but let's bring up the magazine. When does the change start?
So the change will start on or around the 1st of April. I'm hopeful that the technology will be in place before the 1st of April. So we're looking at the end of March, but that may not happen. But certainly the April magazine will be there. You will see a couple of things change with that. The digital magazine will be accessed in 2 ways. There will be an NMRA mobile app for tablet and mobile devices going into the App Store. That will go in March. That will have the NMRA magazine on it, amongst other things. There'll be member content and non-member content. And we'll talk more about the app in a second. And then for the majority of people, I think would view the NMRA magazine online on their computer. If you don't install the app, you can do that, and you'll be able to seamlessly do that through the NMRA website. So you'll go to the NMRA website and it'll launch a third-party application that provides the app. We won't be using the PDF flip that we used as a prototype. We'll be using some software from Zinio, but it's not the same software that Calmback use. It's different. And there's also a Chrome extension available that you can put onto Google Chrome, view through Google Chrome, and then save to read offline if you want to use it on your laptop and not have the internet connected. So it's very capable. The reason that we chose Zinio was because it gives us the ability to put the magazine into a way that people are familiar with viewing, and then allow them to manipulate it in any which way they want. So you have the ability to zoom in, you have the ability to take just the text and read it like a Kindle. You have the ability to save particular pages or parts of pages. You can flip things, you can zoom on things, you can re-rotate it, you can do all kinds of stuff, and we'll have some videos to show people how to do all this kind of thing. Ultimately, long term, we're kind of tied into the contract there with our current publisher for another 2 years. RFPs will be going out. That may mean that in 2 years' time we're able to change the way that the magazine is formatted, and that may allow us to do a different, more modern, more better for digital publication version. But right now I can't do that, so I'm trying to do the best with what I've got. And in terms of stuff that will be there on the app, I'm looking to put the beginner guides onto there from the website. They've just been in the process of being updated. We're also looking to put some other content. And then my hope is that we'll be able to persuade people through direct marketing and with support manufacturers to download the app. And then sitting in the back of the application for people like Geoff and membership people and stuff, there's a full marketing suite that will allow you to target messaging to people who have downloaded the app, whether they're members or not, that are either in your geographical area at that time or in a wider geographical area. So we'll be able to, for example, if you put on a large train show in Portland, you would be able to target everybody within 300 miles of Portland that's downloaded the app and say, hey, our train show's in this date. So we'll be launching all that and we'll be adding to that. So it's very, very capable. Also, we have, and we will be loading in the back issues of the magazine back to October 2020. So we kind of been setting a few little things for this since I came on the board in November last year. And also as part of this project, all of the magazines from 1935 to 1978 have been digitized and they will be going on the website, but initially as PDF flip. I need to find some money to put those into the app, but they will go into the app as soon as I've got the money there to pay to do the conversion. The reason we're saying the money there to pay to do the conversion is because the conversion gives us searchable text, which means you'll be able to search for things in the catalog. All right, but whether that's there on day one or not, I don't know. Day one is MVP, is get the magazine there that people can read it. So there's a lot of work there. Software computer guys on here can probably appreciate that. We've got to build an API and do some significant upgrades of the NMRA's infrastructure to enable us to connect into an app seamlessly without you having a login for Zinio and a login for the NMRA. But that's where we're at. So I thought that was of use and wasn't making people fall asleep there, but that's where we're at with the digital publishing.
Okay, that actually answered most of my questions. Actually, the only other one I have is, I hope, redundant. The app will be both Android and iOS.
Yeah, and it's provided by a third party that do this professionally. If you want to go and have a look at the app is the same app that the New York Times and the Washington Post use.
Oh.
There's no point buying inferior products. So they use that, and so it's well tested, well trusted, and it's on some significant infrastructure. So it isn't going to lag, it isn't going to fall over, and it hasn't cost us a lot of money. So we're moving that to that for that reason. You know, and I think the other thing, people here who like your print magazines, maybe it isn't going away. We're not removing it. It'll be there, and for life members, you'll get both print and digital. For members who aren't due to renew for another year or 2 years or however many years you've got left, you'll get the magazine, because as of the 1st of April, the digital magazine becomes a part of member benefit. So if you're a member on that day, you get it. The one thing I would say is you need to make sure that you're registered with the website. You need to make sure that headquarters have your current email. If you're not getting the turntables and you're not getting the bulletins and you're not getting the dispatches, that's probably a good indication that we don't have your email address. If we don't have your email address and you're not registered on nmra.org, there's no way you'll be able to log in to get the mobile app, or to get the magazine. So rather do that right now rather than wait for a mad rush of folk. If everyone decides to do that on the 1st of April, then that might overwhelm the IT team, but that's kind of, it's there. So
is NMRA headquarters planning on sending out a snail mail blast regarding that? And then
it's going out in February. Yeah, it's going out in February. So that's ready to go in February to all US members. Of course, this is a worldwide effort, so I'm working closely with the other regions outside of the United States, so Canada, and, well, they're not a region, but you know what I mean, NMRA Canada plus the Europeans and the Brits to get them to do similar messaging. But yeah, there'll be a snail mail blast go out in February. Hopefully the Rona doesn't cripple the postal service by then, and it reaches people before the 1st of April, but snail mail. So there'll be some emails as well going out to people that we know your email address, but you're not registered on the website. So, and I suppose the one other thing people ask me about the cost, I hate increasing the cost, and trust me, I tried everything I could to not increase the cost. But if we didn't go digital now, and we kept the print, for those that wanted print, we'd have been looking at over $100 in a very short order, which was just too. I don't think that's fair. So we needed to do something. So whilst the cost has gone up, and people would say, well, digital should make the cost come down, it has made the cost come down, but it's obviously people won't feel that because the cost has actually gone up. But yeah, so that's where we're at.
So will Zinio be a separate login, or will it be accessible through the NMRA website?
No, it'll be seamless. No, separate logins not acceptable. So it'll be a seamless thing. We will have an API in place that passes across membership information to the app. So that's all going to be in place. We need to do a website upgrade for that in the background, and this has never been done before with our website. So our website's on Drupal. Zinio have never interfaced with Drupal before, but we'll get it done. We've managed to secure dev resources for them to build a whole new application to help support the NMRA. So it'll be done, and yeah, we're working on that right now. So we'll be looking for beta testers. If anyone's particularly wants to be a beta tester in March, I'll be looking for 20 beta testers. Just drop me an email, president@nmra.org. It will cost you to be a beta tester, in that I need you to give me at least 3 lines of feedback. But obviously beta testing helps everybody out, because if there are some significant problems that you find, we need to know about it. But really what we're looking for is testimonials from members and people to be champions of helping in your area use this app, because it's a journey that we're on. This is just kind of the first step of it. So
is it your contractual commitments at present to your current publisher that prevents you from putting it out in PDF form?
No, it's not. However, the PDF that we get from them is not going to be very readable. So it would, for us to reformat it to look like MRH would cost a fortune. That's the long and short of it. We got some strong feedback that for us to put it out as a PDF flip just wasn't acceptable to people, and I fully expected that, but I had to do that prototyping to get the feedback and the backup to what I was saying, which was that we needed to spend a bit more money. It wasn't a lot more money, but just to spend any money in a not-for-profit is difficult. So yeah, that's why. Like I say, if I think us going down this route is the right route, because it gives us better other features that are of use, depending how we use them. But it gives us other features. Having a mobile app in the App Store for the NMRA is a positive thing, as far as I can see. But on renewal of contract, we may be able to look at some alternatives, Geoff, and have it as a PDF. But currently, if you read the NMRA magazine today, you'll know that there's tons and tons of stuff that flows across multiple pages. And so to churn that as a PDF, you're going to have layout plans and images and all sorts of stuff chopped all over the place, and it's just an absolute mess. Whereas if we put it into Zinio, into a proper web app, not only is the whole thing searchable as the catalog builds, it also means you can zoom in and take out of a page a track plan by zooming into that track plan, take that out of the page, shrink it onto legal size paper or bigger paper if you've got it, and then print or save that one particular image, and that's a 6K PDF that's going into Zinio, so it'll be a lot higher quality.
I read MR via their Zinio app for a couple of years, and 2 comments. Zinio wouldn't let you print more than 2 pages at a time, which I thought was grotesquely unacceptable. And customer response from Zinio, customer support from Zinio was non-existent.
Yeah.
So I'm not impressed.
Yeah. No, and I did as well, but they've moved on as a company. Their products have moved on. We're not using their marketplace product, which is what Model Railroader used. And this will be an NMRA application, so it will be supported by the NMRA. So we've basically got a whitewashed application that we've branding up to look like the NMRA. It's got their infrastructure it sits on top of, but yeah, we were the ones basically with the ability to provide the majority of the support, because all the logins, etc., will be through the NMRA.
I'd like to change the subject slightly, if I could, to the NMRA convention, the national convention.
Yeah.
Is there thinking that based on the success of the Zoom conventions that maybe some combination or morphing of the NMRA national is appropriate? Also, in that vein, my understanding that there were limitations in the past of videotaping virtually every presentation in the NMRA convention. Is that thinking still prevalent in the NMRA?
Well, no. Fundamentally, the thinking's different. The limitations on the logistics remain. To videotape 190 clinics requires a horde of equipment and volunteers that we just don't have. To do a hybrid convention, at this point, we don't have the national team to be able to deliver it. So logistically, we can't do it at this point. Do we think that it's something that if money and resource and volunteers was no object, we would do? Of course we would. That's the change that's probably from previous, it has changed. I think where we're at right now is, when I became president, there was no national convention after Texas next year. And I challenge people to think differently, to think about providing the national convention in places that we've not provided it before, smaller towns, smaller cities, different times, reduce the cost as much as possible. Let's not try and go to Santa Clara. You know, so I can tell you that we've got a bid from California that's come in, but I need a bid from somewhere. And we've got a bid from how would you guys consider it? Well, it's everywhere's east of you, isn't it? I suppose it's yeah, sort of in the southeast, mid-south of the United States.
Atlanta?
No, it's north of Atlanta, but south of Chicago, I'll give you that. We were hoping to get a bid from there, but there isn't anywhere in 26 or 27. And so for me, it's like, how do we better prepare the organization so that we can go on that journey and make that change? So I'm looking at doing that. We've tripled the IT team. We've got the NMRAX team. We're bringing on new people into that team all the time, training them how to do production, how to do all the different bits and pieces. But we just physically couldn't afford to fly that entire team from all over the world to a convention. So I think the question I'm asking at the moment is, why can't the NMRA do an online event and an in-person event every year? Why can we not do something in winter and something in summer? What does that look like? But we still, what we've got to do is keep our finger on the pulse as to what starts emerging as we move out of COVID into this new world, because it is different. The world won't go back. The genie left that bottle. So I'd say watch this space. I think that the culture is starting to change at national. And definitely, it wouldn't be out of hand dismissed. And I think that would have been the case 3 or 4 years ago. That wouldn't happen now. But the challenge remains that the person that did recording of the clinic was Jerry Leone and 2 of his mates. So, and I've no Jerry anymore, and I've no mates of his. So, I've got a big gap there to try to sort that out.
Yeah, one of the things that I got schooled on by Jerry Leone, and I deserved it, I earned it, is that a lot of the facilities that they hold nationals in, hotels, etc., will contractually forbid us from recording on site unless we use their recording company. It's
Yeah,
it's like at the National Train Show, you pay to have somebody plug something into power.
yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, and I think the convention that we will have in California, if we have it, will be absolutely not permitted to do it. But there's nothing to stop us doing something that's virtual, that's beamed into the hotel. So it's about just sitting down, looking at the problem and finding different solutions to it. And I think that's probably the better way to go forward. But we're not there yet. But it's something I would like to see. I would like to see us, even if we had 1 or 2 clinic streams where all the clinicians were remote, people could dial into Zoom to see that, and you could also sit in a room in the hotel and watch that clinic and discuss with the clinician who was also remote, even if to Geoff's point, even if they were remote in a hotel room in the same hotel on a Zoom meeting, they can't stop them doing that to get around these nonsense laws and rules. Then that's what I would like to see us do as a stepstone towards it. But we need to go on small steps. We can't just take giant leaps. It just won't work. The organization won't. The organization will push back if I try to do too much too soon.
So Gordy, I want to thank you for unlocking the organization as far as you already have. I for one appreciate the changes we're seeing over the administrations previously. A question, a curiosity, going back to the magazine. Did I hear correctly that the Australians are not getting the online magazine?
Yeah, that's correct.
And why? I did not understand the explanation.
Okay, well, when I explain it, it'll make sense. So basically, when did you last see a non-North American prototype in the magazine?
I think I know the answer to this one, and it's never.
It's
been a long
never.
time.
It's never. And so the NMRA, the franchisees of the NMRA, Canadians are Canadians, all right? So they're North American prototypes. So forget them for a second, although they matter dearly to me, anyone listening to this recording. But the Europeans and the Brits spawned into the NMRA for people who have an interest in North American content. So they are happy to consume that content. The Aussies, on the other hand, tried to run the NMRA as the NMRA in Australia, like the NMRA is in the United States. Any prototype goes, whatever you want. And so they've got about 60-40 split, where 60% of their people are interested in the Australian prototype only. And so their argument is they've nothing of interest to it. They've got just over 800 members in Australia now, and only 58 of them take the paper magazine. Partly that's down to the fact it costs over $150 to get a membership and the magazine in the UK and Australia. But it's also that's just indicative of how many people actually want to consume that content. So what we've done for Australia is to prevent them having to have a $20 Australian a year increase, which is about, Australia's expensive. In Sydney, that's like a Big Mac meal, but whatever. I'm pretty annoyed about the way this has come out, but this is about listening to people and taking on their views, and you need to do that to provide strong leadership here. So we've done that, and we've made a decision they could opt with any of the outer regions outside of North America can opt out as an entire region on the basis of there's not enough content in there. However, what we've done is we've adjusted the editorial guidelines that we give to White River to ask them to include a broader range of prototypes. Bringing in our first, and we're going to be starting to discuss now, bringing in our first non-American special interest group from the UK, a group in the UK who do finds effectively like Proto 48, but for UK, O scale want to join the NMRA as a special interest group. So we got different groups internationally starting to come into the NMRA. So we need to change that editorial guidelines to say you need to include some overseas stuff as well that's of general interest. So we'll look to do that. The life members in Australia will get the magazine, but that's where it's at. And there's not an individual opt out either. No one individually can opt out. It's a global decision. If we'd gone down the route of the prices would have been a lot higher for everyone if we'd gone down the route of offering 3 different levels of membership. It would have been it would just been crazy. So that's why.
And the Aussies opt into getting the magazine via digital?
Sorry, the Aussies can change their mind, but once you're in, you're in.
As a region or just as an individual?
No, as a region.
So the only thing the Aussies can do then is get the print magazine if they want it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll see what happens with that. We'll see what happens there in Australia. There's elections for their regional committee, and I'm sure it'll be a part of that discussions there, pro and for and against. It's for us really to prove the benefit. I don't think they'll get left too far behind.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking there was something more legal about it rather than what you were suggesting. So thank you.
No, it was just absolutely. I'm a very, very honest person. I used to be in the Navy, and I went to the academy, and I went to Britannia Royal Naval College, and one thing I learned was to admit if you'd not bothered shaving that morning when you got on the parade square. So same thing here. I'm very honest with people, and if you ask me a question, I'll answer it honestly. And it was just simply a case of listening to their feedback. I had multiple middle of the night conversations with them, and I met with all of their division representatives. I had a huge meeting with like 20 of them and listened to them. Same in the US though. I've done 3 or 4 meetings with region presidents, so I've spoken to all of your region presidents. We did 2 surveys. We've gone with what the people's feedback. So we'll continue to do that as well. There'll be more surveys that come out.
Is there anybody looking at potentially another reorganization of national to get the regions more connected to national than just an advisory council?
Not at this time.
Okay.
That's not yet. That's not been discussed or brought up by anyone at this time. It's an honest answer to that. There's other projects as well. Now we've answered the digital question. We're moving on to other projects. So I just kicked off a project. Well, I'll be kicking off a project on the 30th of January, but I just sent out the invitations to people, which will look at reorganizing some of the way that we deliver education adopting some of the learning from this pandemic. That's Project Donut, and we'll have a few other projects coming along just to add member benefits. We're always looking at what we can add, how we can improve. I don't know if you track the membership program, but I can remember I was there at the very beginning of the membership program running around in Florida, in Orlando. It wasn't running very fast. It was a bit too hot. The outdoor air conditioning was definitely broken that day, but I was going around in Orlando pointing the then very, very brand new Christina, the marketing consultant, to various people who I thought would work with us quite quickly, and getting those first 10 partners in. And now we've got nearly 50, and they continue to be added all the time. So we're always trying to add benefits to the membership. I think it's starting to pay off. I was quite pleased. I got the figures on Friday night from Frank, the CFO, that whilst overall in 2021 in the US we're down with our membership slightly, since August we're up 200 members. So it's starting. We're definitely turning a corner with people, and we just need to keep that going and keep that momentum. And it's very, very, very important that what you guys are doing here today and locally, that we keep in doing this, and we're adapting and keeping the organization going at grassroots level, because that's where it happens. National, my main job is to avoid scandal. And I don't know if you see that, if anyone watches like TikTok videos or these little YouTube videos, but there's this guy with I think she's an Asian wife, and she's always no scandal, and she throws the shoes at him and stuff like that. Well, that's kind of how I see National. National's not there to be coming up with loony policies anymore and ridiculous statements about only serious modelers are in the NMRA and things like that. We're there to prove why serious modelers need to be in the NMRA, not tell people they have to be in the NMRA. That's not the way it's going to work from now going forward.
So speaking of loony policies and scandals, what about changing the minors policy?
Already in draft, or it was the first thing I started to do.
Thank you.
It's just waiting for the attorney to sign off on it. It's still going to be called the at-risk persons policy because of the litigious nature of it, but it's going to be much more simply explained. We've put a proper affidavit on it, and it's now in our comms, marketing and stuff. It's going to be about what matters to me personally, which is involving the family. The reason I'm here as your president is because my father involved me in his hobby, and my mother supported me doing this hobby. My father's friends, my relatives, all supported me doing the hobby, whether that was coming along to clubs, joining up as members of X, Y, and Z, or X, Y, and Z, and whatever. And that's what we need to be promoting to do, is to focus on the family, because we need to hook the entire family. It's very, you all know yourselves, it's a bit, that it's like sports and stuff like that. If you've got to be involving everybody involved in that. If you've got a kid that does soccer, then you tend to be involved in some part of helping with the kid's soccer team or baseball team or whatever, right? So why would that be any different for model railroading? And that's what we've got to get our heads around, and we've got to start focusing on that, because the minute that you've got the family there, the at-risk policy disappears. It doesn't matter, does it? Because the parent's there, because you've got the parent involved, and we're not running daycare centres, so we're not running childcare centres here. So we need to be looking at that in a slightly different way, and that is happening. As soon as that draft gets signed off, that'll be done. The other thing that I'm doing is kind of on that vein, before somebody mentions it, is explaining to you guys where the dues goes. So I am working on, I thought, like, what's the best way for me to explain this? So what I've done is I've done a track chart, and I'm working through this track chart to show some junctions and some stations as to where the major bits of the money goes to. So we'll be putting that infographic together, and we'll be putting it in the magazine, and we'll be putting it out to members. It probably won't come out till March, but that's simply because the budget gets set at the end of February. So it's around making sure it aligns to what the budget is for this year. And once we've got that infographic, guys, I can just update it every year. So we'll be starting to introduce stuff like that, because there's no secrets. There's nothing exciting, I promise you. There's no little books. There's definitely no football. There's no nuclear option to destroy anything. So there's no point hiding all these secrets, these perceived secrets. And no one at National's trying to do that. I just don't think there was a realization that people were curious to that extent. So we're trying to just write those little things, and if we keep doing that, I'm sure it'll be helpful for you all.
I'm sure a large part of it's going to be salaries in any case, just simply because between salary, taxes, social security, benefits, and whatnot, it gets expensive to hire a person.
Yeah, we do have. Obviously, we're not going to go into the level of detail of saying, here's what we're paying the folks. We don't pay people very much. I can tell you that people don't get paid very much here. There's a reason that our office is in Tennessee, and it's we're not spending oodles of cash on wages, but obviously it becomes a significant amount of your operational spend. The NMRA still, I can tell you now, our operational costs are not covered by our dues. We rely on donations. If it wasn't for the donations that come in from life members and other ordinary members in other places every year, we would be running at a deficit. So, we will explain exactly how that all works and get that out to folks.
That might help the annual begging letter to know that.
Well, yeah, that's not the reason why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I think it's not the Freemasonry. So we need to be being honest and telling people how it works, There is no secret handshakes. There is no secret anything really.
No, I think
Yeah, if you
I
told
think
me that was a
Richard though
secret
touched,
handshake.
I think Richard touched on something though that's actually pretty significant. I'm on and have been on the boards of different nonprofit organizations. I can tell you for a fact that there's a whole different mentality of people donating if they know how and where the money goes for use. If they don't know, if they think that they're contributing to a general fund, you get a completely different reaction talking to people about donating. If on the other hand, you say, we need money to do this specific thing because it's important, you can get all kinds of money. And the mentality of donation is completely different. So I applaud what you're trying to do. I think you ought to take what Richard said though with lots of grains of salt, because I think asking for donations ought to be tied with, look, this is how we're going to use the money, period. And your honesty and your approach with it might go a long way if you couple the two.
Yeah, I mean the way I put it is, so I grew up in a Methodist household where my family are all Sunday school teachers, and I was always taught that if you do good, it comes back in kind. And so whilst Richard's right, we will get that benefit from it. We're just trying to do good, and if you do good, that the rewards will come. So that's the culture that I'm trying to put at national level, is to say you need to change the culture needs to be honest and have integrity and listen and communicate, and that's what we are trying to do. If from that there will be benefits. From NMRAX, people said you need to charge people for NMRAX, you need to do this, you need to do that, and I said it's not costing anything. It's not costing us anything other than time. The volunteers are willing to put the time in. The people will join the NMRA. No, they won't. No, they won't. No, they won't. And loads and loads of people join the NMRA to support NMRAX because they felt that they were getting value from an organization that wasn't asking them for anything. So, it will pay. It will pay off. I know it will, but
I think that there's a model with NMRAX and also with the narrow gauge conventions. There's a lesson or a set of lessons to be learned from both of them. And I really hope that the NMRA does lift its head out of the sand and take a look and say, why do these things work? Right? And why are they different than the NMRA nationals? I believe there are lessons there, and I really do hope you at least have a look with an open mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I certainly do. And there's a majorly a new team, pretty much a complete new team now at national, and they're getting set the same goal is just don't just regurgitate the same thing we've done for X number of years because it isn't working. Don't take anything away from anyone because people are happy, not complaining and not saying that's rubbish, but to look to add more, seek to see what else is out there and what's going on, not just in model railroading. So that's what we're doing, and I promise we'll see that difference. It's just a journey that we need to go on. It's not something that we can. If it was a switch I could just flip, I would flip it, but we can't. But we're definitely talking to the prototype modelers. I'm looking very closely. I don't know who here follows the Illinois Tech Model Railroad Club down at Illinois Tech University, but I do, and I watch very closely what the youngsters are doing there. And I think that's a model of how to run an NMRA division personally. I don't think, for me, I think competitions that are important to people, they're not important to me. I think, the 3 rules, you can turn up 3 times, then if you're not a member, you can't turn up again. Why are we still doing that when we're on Zoom? It's things like that. Why are we not, encouraging you're here, come and join us and see what we're all about. And then, when we could become a member, you take on a role, well, it'll just happen. So, but yeah, I appreciate everyone's feedback, and that's why I'm here. So we take everything on board that you guys have just said.
One suggestion, you were saying about putting this out in March. delay it till April when it can go into the first digital edition. It'll be a great hook to get people started reading it, and it'll be available to everyone.
Well, when I say it's going to be available in March, that would be the April one because of the deadline. I'm doing the March. The stuff for the March issue will have to be done by the 20th of January. So.
Oh yeah, print media. Forgot about
Print
that.
media,
Sorry.
pal. Print.
MRH is a little different.
Yeah, so I have to work to the timelines that I've got, but we work with what we've got, don't we? So.
Yep.
You don't win a war by wishing for equipment that you don't have in your hand. So.
Gordy, I've been an NMRA member for quite a few years, and I'm a life member. I want you to know that I'm astonished that you're here at this meeting. And I want you to take your takeaway from that comment is that it's incredibly different. And that's what I mean when I say I'm astonished. I hope you find a way to continue it and encourage at least some version of it in the future. I'd like to be astonished again.
Oh, I appreciate that. I think, we've got to change the culture, and we've got to set the precedent that there's new expectations and people need to meet them. I don't know if anyone read Tony Costa's column in the NMRA magazine. He didn't ask me, he didn't tell me he was writing that, and he put a sentence in about being a director in the January issue of the NMRA magazine. And he said, Gordy's got a list and he's taking names and forcing deadlines, and it is true. I don't know who's let that cat out the bag, but anyone that says I'm going to do something now has to give me a deadline and has to report every month on what they're doing. And if they've not made progress, they have to explain themselves. And it may feel a bit like going to the headmaster's office, but I expect results, and they better know that. So. Things are starting to happen. Not yet at the pace at which I want them to. They need to happen a lot quicker. But if it's proven a point that we can go from the winter board meeting last year, where the messaging was digital magazine. Yeah, 4 years ago we did a survey on that. Nobody wanted it. Forget it. We've gone from that to you're having a digital magazine. And we went and we spoke to publishers. We asked people's opinions. We asked the membership. We did meeting after meeting after meeting. We prototyped it. We threw the prototype away, found another prototype. We did, RFPs, looked at other suppliers. We did comparisons between 5-6 different digital magazine publication, platforms. So we can do every project at that pace. We need to start doing it. So it's just about bringing, increasing the national team to a size where it can deliver that, and then you will continue to be astonished. You shouldn't just be an astonishing thing that it's sad. It's sad for me that it's astonishing to people that the NMRA president actually bothers themselves to come to a division meet to hear from the members that matter. That just speaks volumes to how broken the system was before, and we won't let that happen again.
Amen to that.
Yeah, I'm not astonished you're here from what I've seen of you before. I'm not astonished you're here because you're the president of the NMRA. I'm astonished that previous ones had such little regard. That was the astonishing thing. But enough of my soapbox. Thank you for coming.
That's right. Thanks,
Is there a chance that you might be able to get Christine to come, as offer up such opportunities, or others on the board to do this? Because I think there's more than you that need to see this.
There are, but there are, and they will do once I trust them to not come and upset you all.
Thank you.
There are, but equally, it's got to be the right engagement. It's waste of time otherwise. Coming here and regurgitating stuff that's been said in presidential columns 10 years ago is not what I'm expecting from people. So there will be, certainly, if you have the opportunity, I would recommend you invite Martin Jenkins, the current at-large worldwide director, to come and talk to you guys. That's a very interesting person to talk to. Also, if you want Christina to come, just send her the invite and she'll be here. But bear in mind, Christina only works 20 hours a week for us, and she already does about 60. So you know, and she has a daughter and a young child and stuff. So it's not always easy, but she will come. If you invite her, she will come. You know,
I was mostly pulling names out of the few names out of the hat that I actually knew. There's
Okay.
so few names that we actually know because, well, they aren't that involved. And that gets
Not
back
yet.
to the regional advisory council sort of thing. But anyhow,
no, well, they will. But yeah, it's they will. And it was, if things continue on Zoom and we go to hybrids and stuff, it gives us more opportunity. If we weren't on Zoom, I physically couldn't be here, no matter what, no matter how much I wanted to be. I haven't got, unfortunately, there isn't an NMRA presidential jet yet, so I can't get, you know, getting from Orkney to you guys, and then so if you want to know where I've been today, right? I'll briefly, and I won't take up too much of your time this afternoon, but this morning I was in this so this week I was with the Eastern Canada Division in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland on Wednesday night. Friday morning my time, between 1 and 4 a.m. I was with the Twin Cities Division in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Then today I've been with the Seacoast Division in the Northeast region, then with the British region. Then I was with the Sierra Division of the PCR. Then I was with Division 8 of the MCR. And now I'm with you guys. Tomorrow I'm with the Fox Valley Division of the Midwest region. And then I'm with the Potomac Division of the Mideast region. And next week, and it carries on. So I couldn't do that. Even the US president with Air Force One can't manage that one in a day. So, you know, I'm just taking complete advantage of where we find ourselves, but it's good. It's all been good feedback every single meeting. So all been something useful. So, you know, but always feel that there is no attack dogs sitting on my mailbox. You can always send me an email, and Geoff knows I will reply to you guys. And if I don't reply to you in a few days, ping me another email, because I was probably asleep when I got your email and missed it. Ping me another. I read it, and then I'd read it, and then I've rolled over and didn't reply. But you know, always you send me an email, suggestions, questions, and if I can answer them without breaching anyone's confidence, then I will do. If I can't give you an answer to a question, I will always explain why, and give you an answer as soon as I can. So
what time is it there?
It's 20 to midnight.
Okay.
Early.
My achievement for the day is that I also managed to chip a Batman decapod while I was doing all this stuff today. So, yeah.
Where do you hail from?
Originally or just now?
Both.
Okay, so originally I grew up just outside Manchester in England, middle of England, between Manchester and Liverpool, but nearer to Manchester. And now I live in a place called Orkney, which is a group of islands off the north coast of Scotland. So if you've ever heard of John O'Groats, then we're 11 miles off John O'Groats. The island that,
aren't you?
Yeah, the island that I live on is Scapa Flow on one side, the North Sea on the other. And it's 3.5 square miles. There's no trees, and there's 400 people that live on our island. So
you live on Scapa Flow?
I live right next to Scapa Flow.
Oh.
I drive over the Churchill barriers that were built by the Italian prisoners of war.
Notable location from World War II.
Yeah, World War II, World War I. I'd love to go visit there.
Yeah, there's still 5 Imperial German Navy vessels from 1919 under the water here in Scapa Flow, and there's obviously HMS Royal Oak and Northampton and a few others that were sunk in the flow. Most of the naval base is intact still. The naval base has 3 gauges of railway. It has standard gauge for the docks. They had narrow gauge for the dry stores, and they had 18-inch wooden wheels, wooden track gauge for, any guesses?
The ammunition, the powder.
Yeah, the cordite store. Yeah, and the cordite store was wooden wheels and wooden. There was nothing wood. Everything was wood. there was no metal anywhere on anything that went in the cordite store. They buried the cordite store under a mountain, so, or under a hill really, but under the biggest hill on the island. So yeah, it's all still there. It's a nice place to live, but it's pretty remote. It's 125 miles to the nearest McDonald's. Domino's is 250 miles away. For me to get home to see my folks, it's 500 miles and it's a 12-hour drive once I reach the mainland. So that's after an hour and a half on a boat.
Wow.
So, but it's a nice place to live, and I work at the hospital, so I'm not busy when I'm turning up to these things in the middle of the night. We have a bit of a pandemic going on, like, you know, so it's been working around the clock for the last few months, but that's just the way it goes, I guess. It doesn't matter.
That makes this even more incredible.
Oh, it's a Saturday, it's fine. I'm not on call. So I'm not on call. Don't worry, no one's dying in the hospital, so I can talk to you guys. But yeah, it's a really, really nice place to live. I used to, unfortunately, I don't get the opportunities. Well, with COVID, I don't get the opportunity to travel at all. But I don't get the opportunity to travel to the States as much as I used to. But I've spent a lot of time traveling to the States, working with hospitals in the US. So that's how I got out and ended up getting dragged into national stuff because I was always there all the time. So it was like turning up at wherever I was, I'd try and turn up at somebody's layout or somebody's op session or somebody's division meet and then feed that back to national. And that's how I found out no one was listening. So made a few changes there. But yeah, it's nice. And I'd love to get out and, you know, see you guys at some point, especially if you hold another convention. Hint, hint, hint. So.
What is it? May 15th through.
That's our regional, yep.
If you want to hold a nice national, you just let me know.
I think it's Seattle's turn.
I think it's a lot of places' turns. Unfortunately, I can tell you that Orkney doesn't have enough hotel rooms across the entire patch. So we're out unless we booked a cruise ship for a week and moored it up, which wouldn't be a bad idea, actually.
That's not
that'd be
bad.
pretty cool.
Hey, Tony Custer wants to do that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, actually. But I don't think we'll manage that in my lifetime. But yeah, it's cool. And where I grew up, so when I was a kid, I said, you know, my maternal family were all Sunday school teachers, but my father was a manufacturer, and we did O-scale 2-rail brass, and we used to produce kits of passenger cars and locomotives. So as a kid, I was packing the kits, and I used to have to do all the handrails and all the door pulls and the knobs on the doors, the nuts and bolts to bolt the things together, the vents on the roofs of the passenger cars, different torpedo vents and all that kind of stuff. So I was doing all that as a kid growing up, going to train shows. So it's always been something that I've been around. Yeah, my dad's business methods, I suppose, were not quite the same as my mother. If my mother ever found out, well, she ended up divorcing him, so she probably did find out. But he used to take the cash register to the pub at 11 o'clock in the morning when it opened, and then everyone had to go from, imagine this, everyone had to go from the train show to the pub to buy a model from us, and then my dad would buy him a pint, and then he'd give him a gift card with £25 off, which was worth about $50 off if you bought a passenger car, if you bought a locomotive. So he'd send you back. If he'd give you a gift card, he probably bought 2 or 3 more pints. So you'd come back and buy more stuff. You'd get back to the stand. Someone would be there with like a pie, but with meat and potato as a filling. They'd hand you a pie because you were getting free sheets to the wind, and then take your credit card off you, get your gift card off you, and you'd buy another kit. Because my dad never wanted to see you in the pub twice, because you by the second visit you weren't fit for buying any more. So that was my dad's kind of business model as a kid. When I was growing up, I was left on the stand handing out the kits, and he would be in the bar or in the pub. So it was all a good fun, and yeah, it's a little bit different in the States than it is there. But I kind of grew up with it all going on in the 90s and the early 2000s within the hobby. So. And well, if you want me to at one point, probably not tonight, but I can always do you a little clinic, Geoff, on and show you my dad's layout that he's building. It's I don't know if you've ever seen any pictures that I've put up on Facebook of it, but he's building an O-scale 2-rail layout that's 40 foot by 20 foot. We built our own house when I was a teenager, and we just didn't put the second story in. We just left it. and just finish the room as one big massive room because we don't do basements. So his layout's in there. It's on 2 decks, and he's building he's built a terminus suburban station to scale, and he's just done the last year's project was that he's just done cobble streets with clay and hand carved the cobble sets.
Wow.
So it's pretty impressive, and he does all the laser cutting and everything that we do for the retaining walls, and the walls that hold up the roof of the station are all done off the original drawings. So it's all been custom done. So it's like, imagine a 15-foot long station that every single thing is scratch built, including the track. That's the kind of thing. But I can do a quick clinic on it if you want one time. No problem.
Oh, definitely interested in clinicians, and I'm thinking maybe March.
Yeah, just give me a shout. Yeah, and tell me what the time is in GMT, because I must have been really tired. I'm sorry. I was probably really, really tired on Wednesday when somebody shouted 11 o'clock. I just wrote it down on my pad, not 9 o'clock.
And you're building an N-scale layout yourself. I seem to remember seeing an oval.
Yeah. So I'm building an N-scale layout that's multi-deck, based on the Wisconsin Central, but today. Not back in the day of Wisconsin Central. Now it's CN, and I've also got some HO Fremo modules that are anywhere you want to in Appalachian coal mining country, basically nondescript. So I've got some HO and some N scale. The N scale is going to end up being about 5 decks in a 8x8 space, but it's not quite 8x8, so it's quite tight. But it's got 5 helixes.
Oh.
So I've just got a double track helix, and one track goes from top to bottom, and the others just join and leave the helix.
Okay.
It's N scale. You don't need a ton of space, and it's all designed for remote operations. So it's only designed for me to be in there with a wireless headset and all my operators to be online. So.
Maybe I need to arrange for Richard to interview you on that, since he's our token N-scaler here, I think.
So hey, don't leave out Max. He just got his MMR.
I've got yeah. So I've got 26 scale trains auto racks due here, and I'm gonna have to pay 35% sales tax on the cost. So I'm expecting that bill on Monday. It's gonna make them about $100 each by the time I've paid for shipping and everything. They were only $40 from scale trains. Pardon?
About the same as what the HO guys pay.
Yeah, but that's why it's cheaper for me to fly to Springfield, stay in a hotel, go drinking all weekend, and go and buy stuff and bring it back, than it is to actually do a single pre-order of that size. So.
Are you coming to Springfield?
No, I can't. There's this pandemic, Geoff, and
we're in the middle of it. In. It's just getting you back is the problem.
I can't afford to, we can't leave. We're banned from leaving because we need everyone that we can at the minute. We're in the peak of Omicron and it's all hands on deck. So yeah, otherwise I probably would have done, but I'm hopeful I'll be able to come to Springfield. I don't see it's not Springfield, St. Louis. I don't see there being a problem with that. I'm hoping if things improve significantly, I may make it to the Indy Junction, but well, that'll just depend on how things go. I think it's valuable that I come out to something, but it's just making sure that the timing all works out with whatever the virus is doing, really.
Right. So does anybody else have any questions, or shall we let this gentleman go get some well-deserved sleep?
Thank you, Gordy.
You're welcome. And like I say, just email me, presidents@nmra.org anytime, and I'll do my best to answer any questions or concerns that anyone's got.
Thanks, Gordy.
Thank you, Gordy.
And thank you, Gordy, for your service in the hospital too.
Thanks, Larry.
All righty. Did anybody else have anything? Or anybody? Since we were in the open mic session. Well, at that rate, I call it 10 minutes to 4. That's a pretty decent meet for second division. So,
Thanks for putting this together, Jeff.
and I believe I said at the beginning, our next meet is February 19th at 1 o'clock, same time. And I'm always looking for clinicians. So thank you all very much.
Take care,
See you
guys.
next month.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.